Warning, the Renegade Recruiter is not for the soft, timid, or faint-hearted. If you need permission or seek approval from your mother, spouse, mates in the pub, or anyone else for that matter, this really isn't for you. If any of what you've heard puts you off in the slightest, I advise you not to listen any further. You've been warned. Prepare yourself for the no bullshit, zero fluff. Quick, dirty, and uncensored secrets for any serious recruitment, staffing, and search business owner who wants to earn more money with less work and fewer headaches, without having to kiss ass or bend over backwards to please anyone. He's a relentless and fearless renegade who will stop at nothing to reveal the harsh, unforgiving, and brutal truth about what it really takes to succeed in this business. He's a guy people love to hate and hate to love. It's your host, Terry Edwards. The Renegade Recruiter is unleashed.
Hello. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter, and welcome to another podcast. And this week's slightly different, but I have to say I'm really looking forward to this because we're interviewing a lady by the name of Wendy Shand. Wendy and I go back, 10, 11 years when we first met. And Wendy is the founder, co-founder and director of a business called Tots to Travel. Now, before you think, that's so different to my business, look, stay tuned because you're going to discover a lot. So, Wendy, let me start by saying thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Wendy.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. Lovely to be on the show.
Great. So look, Wendy, I said we go back a long way. Look, for those that don't know you, just tell us a bit about your business first of all. What does Tots to Travel do?
Well, that's a great question. We started 11 years ago when I was a mum of two very small children, and I found myself in the position that very many new parents find themselves in, which was desperately needing a holiday more than ever before, and then asking myself, well, how do you do it? How do you take small children away on holiday? And actually, so I began to research it. So I was in the discovery phase and found that there was very little on offer, and then found that leaving the house is like having to hire an articulated lorry to take you and your kids and all their gear anywhere. So there was that challenge, and then when we actually did finally get away on holiday and we'd rented a house in France, my little boy fell into an unenclosed swimming pool, and so and just sank, because that's what happens when children who can't swim fall into water, they just sink, and we came very, very close to a really, really nasty accident. We were lucky. We were not very far away, and we were able to fish him out. But I know that 9 children die in Andalusia every summer through pool accidents. So I was really becoming very, very aware that the mainstream travel world was not addressing the niche needs and very specific needs that I had as a mother of 2 small children, and equally that there was this enormous market of mums just like me, indeed mums and dads, wanting to take their children on holiday, but not there being nothing for them. So I started to investigate, how hard can it be, is one of those mottos that I've lived my life through. And I started to talk to customers, potential customers, people with small children, and I got the thumbs up from them. And then I started to talk to people who own villas, and I found that people who own villas have a very similar, have a big challenge. They can rent their properties out in July and August, but they can't rent them out in the off-peak season, and of course families with children who don't go to school don't want to travel in July and August. So putting those two segments together, I had a hypothesis that would be really something that would take off. And so in answer to your question, that was a rather long-winded way to answer your question, Terry, but in answer to that, we are a niche travel company that markets to families with under 5, specifically catering for families in that segment. And we do that through making sure that the holiday accommodation, villas and resorts now, so it's not just villas, are properly kitted out, they're properly safety checked. We are making sure that all your gear is there. We have an essential kit guarantee, etc., etc., etc. So really, all the things that you would hope would be in place for you are when you book with Tots.
Wow! And I know that you're the co-founder, and you founded the business with your husband Rob.
Yes.
So, and is that still the case? Are you and Rob the main directors of the business, Wendy?
Absolutely. Well, he at the time was in the RAF, and it was my idea, and then he I don't think quite realised what journey we were on. I knew which journey we were on, but I'm not sure he knew from the beginning which journey he was on. And I set it up while he was still in the Air Force, really as an exit strategy for him, so that when he eventually did leave the Air Force, that he would have something to go to other than the airlines. And so really, I ran it, and then he segued into the business when he left the Air Force about 6 years ago.
Wow.
And ever since then, we've run it together. We have very, very different skill sets, as you well know, Terry. I'm the person who has the bonkers ideas and I know what we could do today, and I can see how this should look, and he's the guy that makes it happen.
Excellent. Yes, I know Rob well, and you do. Your skill sets are well matched. Tell us, what did Rob do in the RAF?
Well, he used to fly the Harrier, so very, very different, and you wouldn't think that makes him automatically a particularly good person to run their own business, but actually that makes him incredibly clever at running his own business, because he's got very, very strong leadership. He's got amazing eye for balance of risk, as you would imagine from a fast jet pilot, and he's got enormous capacity, and he's a very, very strategic thinker. So he's a very smart person to have as my wingman.
Wow. I think there's a couple of things you said, Wendy, that I just want to go back on. You said that your son fell into a unenclosed, if that's the right word, a swimming pool. How far away were you when that actually happened?
Really, really not far away. The pool was in the garden, and we were all out around the pool. But we were sort of, when you're on holiday, you sort of dibble around, don't you?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sitting right next to him. You need only be a metre or two away. These things happen really, really quickly. And so there was no, it wasn't that he was in the house and we were in the house and he wasn't. We were all around and about. Just that these things happen very quickly.
And that for you was that incident thought, I've got to do something about this, so nobody else.
Yeah, it was actually a combination of the whole thing. It was the discovery phase of realizing that it was very hard to find what I was looking for. Then the actually getting away and being away on holiday was very difficult. And in the end, I was sort of sitting there thinking, well, if we get away from this holiday, having not visited Bergerac Hospital, then we'll have done well. And so to me, that didn't really seem a particularly satisfactory benchmark for a successful holiday. So that was the way that sort of began to unfold. And then the owner very kindly sent me a feedback form saying, could you give us some feedback on what you on your experience in the villa? And I said, so I very, very helpfully listed all the things that would have made our holiday better. So if there had been a stairgate, and if the pool had been fenced, and all of this sort of thing. And I thought, geez, this is not expensive. This is not an expensive thing to do, and I just don't understand why owners aren't doing it. But of course they just can't see what they can't see. As soon as you're out of having a baby, you forget and move on, and you don't come back to it. So I was able to see something that they couldn't see themselves.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said that I have to say left me speechless. You said 9 children die a year.
It's phenomenal. I mean, we when you're attuned to it, it is happening in phenomenal numbers, really uncomfortable numbers. There's a number of things that happen. First of all, that very, very few pools have any pool safety around them in any way, shape, or form. So if you go and rent a villa in Spain, there are no pool laws. British children are not trained to be familiar with pools, and so they don't really they think it's a source of much excitement. And also that when you're on holiday, everyone begins to relax, which is exactly what needs to happen. And then there is an element of everybody thinks that the other people, somebody else is looking after the kids. You know, oh, she's looking after it. Everyone thinks that somebody else is doing it. So it can happen really easily. There are things that you can do to avoid it. So we've worked really hard at that, and of course, because of our situation, the pools have to be barriered in some way, shape, or form as a matter of principle, or else we don't continue the conversation. And we were very lucky.
Yeah. So that was you founded that, and that because of the experience you went through. I have to say when I don't think it's too dramatic. I mean, I sometimes you're sharing that with me. I'm thinking, how many lives have you possibly saved? Because the very fact you've raised the standards of hotels and villas for parents. That's amazing.
Yes, I've not ever thought of it like that. What I do know is that one of us, the reason we exist as a business is because we fundamentally believe that holidays make families stronger, and particularly in this this increasingly disconnected, fast-paced world, that the holiday and that really precious time is really important, and therefore you've got to choose your holiday right, and it's got to be right. It's got to be right, and so that what I do know from the feedback that we get is that our work is having a significant impact, positive, I'd like to say, significant impact on the quality of people's holidays, and that means an awful lot to me. It's a really, really strong value of mine.
Yeah, excellent. So that was 11 years ago. You founded Tots to travel, and now I know offline you told me you employ 24 people now, and you're
we're in a period of fast growth. We are growing sort of 40 to 70%, depending on which stat you look at. We're just in the process of building up to the Christmas, the post-Christmas period. So the travel industry is incredibly cyclical. In terms of recruitment, it's very challenging because you only need people for certainly in terms of sales, you only need people for certain times of the year at peak numbers, and so we will go into enormous operational overdrive on the 26th of December and won't look up again until April time. During which time one hopes we have done 40% of our business for the year. So it's a hugely important time. So yes, we're in the process of recruiting at the moment, growing the team, training them, really making sure that they're very well managed, that we've got efficiencies through the business, that everyone's KPI'd, and everybody's very absolutely clear on their function within the business. So we've worked really hard at that.
Wow, so you start from zero to, and I know now that in terms of figure, you're doing anything between sort of 8 and 20 million a year now. From zero, that is absolutely amazing. Anybody listening to this, because most of the people listening to this, Wendy, are business owners. If you could give a piece of advice to any business owner, regardless of what niche they're operating, what would be the advice or guidance you would give to them?
Oh gosh, there's so much. There's so much. How do you even ground in on one? I think.
Sorry, Wendy. I don't want to interrupt, but give us, in your opinion, the top 5 things that to be successful in business is probably, because you're right, there can be so many. But what would you say?
It's such a topic that I feel so passionate about, actually, that we could be very happily here all day. The first one is, I think you have to have differentiated products. So and this is really key, particularly in the travel industry, but I think it is relevant in any sector that you're in, that we can't all sell the same product. So, for example, in the travel industry, almost every website is selling the same hotel rooms in Portugal or the same hotel rooms in Turkey, for example, and more or less those hotel rooms are also on Booking.com. So so we could continue to sell those same hotel rooms in Turkey and Portugal, but in the end, Booking.com will win, because Booking.com is enormous, and it's got enormous digital budgets, and it's got enormous numbers of people and vast resources. And so we are really idiotic. We would be complete idiots to continue to try and sell the same, essentially commoditized product as everyone else. So one of the things that we have done recently, and I'm really excited about, is that we've started to create our own resorts, and we launched. We've got 3. We've got one big resort in Tenerife that is a branded Tots 2 Travel resort. It's a unique concept for families with under 5s. It's called Green Gardens in Tenerife, and also then 2 micro resorts, one in Spain and one in France. And that is a product that you can only buy through Tots 2 Travel. So we've completely managed the channel. We can completely control the channel. Nobody else can. You can't buy it on anywhere else. You can't buy it on Booking.com. You can't buy it anywhere else. And so we've created our own product. And I think, what that means, particularly for recruiters, is that you've got to create something that sets you out from anyone else in the market. You have to do something different. And I think in recruitment that's really tricky, because essentially the process is pretty much the same. So how are you going to do it so that you are different and stand out? So I think that's really key. So this proposition, this value proposition, and differentiated product. How are you going to do it differently? And then I think the remainders are to do with how do you as a business owner become successful. And one of the things that you've always said is, do what other successful people do, and copy what they're doing. And I think that's so true. So I think Rob and I see ourselves as, or try to see ourselves, it would be a bit arrogant to say we are this, but we very much see that we are trying to become the same as an elite athlete, only for the business world. So what is it that elite athletes need, or elite business owners need, in order to do it really, really big? Neither Rob nor I are up for creating best in class for Stanford. We're about creating a global brand, and that requires Rob and I to be absolutely on peak performance. So what is that? And that is, that's about how do we look after ourselves. That's about being fit. It's about eating really healthily. It's about sleeping really well. It's about all the things that make sure that your brain is on absolute peak performance, because it's the quality of them. Tony Robbins talks about the quality of your questioning. The questions you ask, the quality of your questions determines how, works towards how successful the business is. And you can only ask really good questions and be really bright about the business if your brain is working really well.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you keep that? How do you become an elite business owner? Of course, if you haven't got particularly big aspirations, of course, carry on doing all the things you've always done. But I think that's how do you keep yourself healthy and your brain on peak performance is really important. We read a lot. We are absolutely avid readers, as you know, Terry, and we've constantly over the years exchanged books and so on. I remember a time, I don't know whether you still do, but the required starting point for any clients working with you was to read The Secret, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we read and we absorb and we act upon much of what we're reading. It's very easy to read stuff and then read it at night and then forget about it, and to do and to know and not to do is not to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so to actually take advice and follow through on what's being suggested in the books, experiment. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you, but it is worth experimenting.
Yeah.
So what have we got there? We've got creating a different, highly different. Differentiated product.
Differentiate into a value proposition. Then looking to become the elite, and you talked about health and well-being and peak performance. And you talked
reading.
Reading, and not only just reading, I thought was interesting, but reading the information and then taking action on it. Absolutely.
It's too easy just to read it and then forget that you ever read it. I'm currently reading Tony Robbins' book Awaken the Giant Within, which is just actually, I think that's almost one central place where everything is in one place. We've always had a coach of one shape or form. Starting with you in the early days, Terry, and I think that is really important. One, you need somebody who can be challenging. You need somebody who's going to hold you accountable. You need somebody who has an external perspective, and I think can come to the party with some value. And then lastly, I think it's about about surrounding yourselves by really, really talented people, and that's talented people in your team. So really bringing in the best that you can bring in, and as people, and really keeping an eye on them, manage them really well, KPI them, make sure they know what their jobs are, and then as the business is growing, be okay with the fact that that some of those people might need to change. I think that's one of the big challenges of scaling. And then also in your personal life, surround yourself by people who are where you want to get to. So very successful people who are where you're heading, because if you keep surrounding yourselves with people who think the way that you've always thought, then you'll carry on. You'll carry on doing much the same as you've always done. And for example, we now share our offices with the former the guy that sold kiddie care to Morrison's some years ago, and he created it's public knowledge. He sold it for £69 million now. We share an office with him, so I have him almost as an unofficial mentor. It's staggering to hear what comes out of his mouth. He's just, he said, we were talking about SEO the other day, and he said, well, this is the strategy we used at kiddie care. And there we are sitting, boiling the kettle and making a cup of tea. That is the value of being around people who have got much, much more experience than you are. And that does need to be actively created.
Yeah, I remember reading, I think it's Jim Rohn, and he said that you will be an average of your 5 best friends.
Absolutely.
And if you want to know, he said you could look at anybody and look at their 5 best friends, the 5 people that they knocked around with, and that will be average of what you're actually earning. And we've certainly found that we've created elite groups for elite clients, and not necessarily elite in terms of the size of the business, but more elite in terms of their attitude. And it's interesting, all the things you say there. So most of our members in our elite group are very conscious about their health and about peak performance. They've all got coaches. We encourage all our elite clients to read books, not just the books that I've written, but it's interesting. That's mandatory, that is, to read my book. But it's such as Tony Robbins. And I just want to come back to that, actually. You talked about Tony Robbins. Of all the books that you've read, and I know that you and Rob have read a lot of books on personal development and business growth and so on. But of all the books that you yourself and Rob have read, is there any one book you go, this is a must-read book? Apart from Tony Robbins, because you kind of mentioned him.
And your book.
And my book's, of course. Yeah.
Just one. Blimey.
You're listening to the Renegade Recruiter Unleashed Podcast. For show notes, additional resources, and podcast updates, head over to www.therenegaderecruiter.com.
I'm not sure I can be pinned down like that, Terry. I really loved The Secret. I know that's been around, knocking around for a long time, and that there are a lot of people who don't like it because it's very American in its style. But I think that's a really good starting point. I really enjoyed The Slight Edge. Which have you come across?
No,
The Slight Edge?
Tell me about it.
No, that's a fabulous book, and I can't off the top of my head remember the author. The Slight Edge is all about those little things that you do every day that either take you up the sort of metaphorical curve of leading life positively, or take you on a downward curve. So
I know it. Yes.
Do you know it? Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember his surname.
I can't remember.
Oh, I do know it. Swedish, I think. Oh, well, I thought he was Swedish. Olsson, something like that. Olsson.
Maybe. Yes.
Yes.
So I think the best example is smoking cigarettes. So on the day that you smoke a cigarette, and in that moment it makes very little difference to the negative difference to your health. It feels good, and so you have a cigarette, and then the next day happens and you have more cigarettes, and the next day happens, and in the moment it makes very little difference to the quality of your life. Aggregated over 2 decades or 3 decades, the effect of that smoking begins to have a profound effect on your health and well-being, to the point that you start heading on a downward curve in terms of the quality of your life. And if you say this, the opposite is true of, say, taking supplements or taking vitamins. So when you decide to take some omega-3, for example, today I took 2 omega-3. Now I don't know if today that has made any tangible difference on my life at all. I cannot possibly tell you. And I won't know for 2 or 3 decades I may never know whether my daily dose of omega-3 is making a jot of difference. But I've chosen to go with the theory that it's probably better to take it than not take it.
Yeah.
And so it's as easy to do as not to do. It's easy to not do the omega-3 because you can't see any tangible benefit. Same with saving money. And the compounding of that over time. It's as all these daily choices that we make that compound over time that take us on a positive upward curve or a negative downward curve.
Absolutely,
and I think that's really, really interesting, and that helps me to resist a piece of cake or not that I smoke, but whatever the equivalents of the fags are, because I know that over time that they will be having a damaging effect. Same with staying in negative relationships, the whole lot. And so what I've done is sought to turn all those areas where I've perhaps been having negative behaviours into positive ones. So I make sure that I have positive relationships. I make sure I'm eating really well. I'm sleeping really well. All those little incremental things, those marginal gains every day over a period of time. And I have to say, I'm feeling great. I'm fit. I run. We eat well. That's not to be smug. It's quite hard work actually. But I'm sure the business is benefiting from having strong, energetic leaders at the top of it.
And on this journey of 11 years ago, and you've done exceptionally well. Say you're a multi-million-pound business now, and you employ 22 people starting from zero. What's been the biggest setback for you on the journey?
Single setback.
Yeah.
I think we've made some. I think recruiting people is always really difficult, and there are always, challenges with that. And I think it's because we're basically nice people. It's very difficult to reverse those decisions, and we probably don't reverse them quickly enough. Big single setbacks. I think there's been lots of small things that have been difficult. I think. Sorry to not be able to give you a very straight answer to that.
Okay. It's a difficult question to answer.
One of the reasons that it's so important to be physically strong and physically and mentally strong is that you do need this extraordinary resilience. You need extraordinary resilience to deal with the stuff that comes at you every day. And that can only come with really working on your personal development, working on your positivity, working on your physical strength, and keep batting stuff off. So I think I think there's a phrase about being gnawed to death by ducks, isn't there? That it's just lots of little things that wear you down over time. We've always been. I probably. To be a bit more helpful in answering that question, I think we've always been undercapitalised. We've never had enough cash. So we've been bootstrapped the whole way along. We did get investment into the business last year, which was really helpful and allowed us to launch our new resort. But it's not much fun being bootstrapped. And I think in retrospect, the investment landscape is very different now from how it was 11 years ago. But if it was now, I would be looking for investment sooner than we did.
And do you know that challenge that you just said there? I think that applies to any business owner. So the challenge around cash and lack of as and when you need it. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And you touched on. Sorry, go on.
And you have to invest. You have to invest, particularly in people, before you can afford them.
Yeah.
And you have to invest in office space before you can afford it. You have to invest in, and all of these things enable you to be more expansive in your thinking. So it's interesting. We particularly to do with office space. When in our last office, we the floor above us came free, and we knew that within the next 6 months we would need that extra space, but we didn't need it right now. Having said that, we couldn't let somebody else take it, so we took the extra space, not really knowing how we could fill it, and within 6 months we filled it. So there was something about giving yourself as almost a bigger container. Things leads you to bigger thinking, more expansive thinking, and same with we moved house recently, and we moved into a bigger house. Well, actually, then you take another step. You take another step up in your thinking about what is possible. You think bigger. You think broader. And there's something in that. It might sound a bit woo woo. I can easily be in the world of woo woo. But there's definitely something in that. And all the while you're sitting there in space that's too tight, having to make do because you haven't got enough of this or enough of that, and is very small thinking. And somehow you need to get yourself out of that thought process.
Yeah. What's been interesting talking to you, Wendy, is that you've taught a lot. What comes across very strongly is all around the mindset. I'm curious, from your point of view, Wendy, what do you believe are the key personality traits that you must have to be successful in business, to be a successful business owner?
I think you need to be enormously curious and always looking to solve, to find a solution, and curious as to how to make things better. So don't just settle for what is now. I think you have to be absolutely committed to personal development and your own personal journey. I mean, I think one of the reasons this has taken us 11 years is that I had been in PR and marketing, but then I did my teacher training, so I was a teacher. I wasn't a business owner, so I've been on the most extraordinary personal journey really over the last 11 years, from teacher through to business owner, and one can't do that overnight. That's a real commitment to personal growth. I think it needs you to really to be enormously resilient, and therefore physically and mentally very strong. And I think what you don't, when you read all those business books about Theocritus and so on and so forth, is you get a sense that it's going to be long hours and it's going to be hard graft. Well, all of us can work hard, but what doesn't come across is the emotional strain that you're under most of the time, whether it's to do with people, whether it's to do with money, whether it's to do with suppliers, whatever it is, you're batting off stuff all the time, and so you have to stay relentlessly positive. And so whatever it is that enables you to be relentlessly positive has to happen. And I think that some of the things we've already talked about. I think the other thing I've really recently discovered is that in order to be all those things, relentlessly positive and very successful and to be thinking bigger, it starts with self-nurture. So it starts with looking after yourself, which I think particularly, I hope this isn't sexist to say so, Terry, but particularly for mums is really difficult to do because they are busy giving a lot of energy and a lot of time, a lot of thought to everybody else around them. So I think the analogy that works really well for me is if you think of a garden, maybe just a square garden, and you split it into four. One quadrant is your work, and we all, a garden needs to be watered, it needs to be weeded, it needs to be really looked after, it needs to be mowed, it needs to be nurtured. And so if our work quadrant, we look after that really well, we water it, we grow it, we weed it, we go to the garden centre. The next quadrant is you and your family, and we probably do a really good job of looking after that as well. In terms of the weeding and the mowing and all the rest of it, we're doing a lot of work in looking after that. The third quadrant, and this is where it starts to sort of fall down a bit, is the third quadrant is you and your partner. And that's where we begin to see the neglect coming in, not willingly, but it just sort of falls a little bit lower down the pecking order. We don't give each other enough time. We the days before the business, you might have offered up a massage. Well, that doesn't happen very much anymore, and the date night goes out the window, and then the kids arrive, and you're in this sort of declining circle of nurturing that particular garden.
Yeah.
And then the fourth quadrant is you yourself, and that's tends to be the most denuded, the one that's not looked after, the one, if you're running short of time, it's your exercise class that goes, if you've got work to do, you stay up later and do it. And, it's that fourth quadrant, the you, that gets the most neglected. And I think what I've learned, and this is really through working with a coach in the States, is that actually it all starts from there, because you start to look after that garden. You feed it well, you nurture it, you read the books, you do all the things that taking care of a garden means, and you start to then have more joy in your life, and more fun, and more energy, and more capacity, and then that means that you've got more joy for everything else that's in your life. And it's what does it need what needs to have positive vibration through your life, and it starts with you. You've got to feel good.
So true. That's a great analogy there about the four quadrants of the garden. And I think anybody, any parent can relate to what you said there about where we tend to give our priority. And I guess even more so if your children. I know your children are a lot older now, but certainly when the young children, that's even more so, isn't it?
I think so. When you're getting up in the night and you're having to that you're very physically hands on, and then you're going to work and all the rest of it. And it's not something that comes naturally. Someone almost needs to give you permission to say, actually, you know what? It's all right to look after yourself. In fact, it's really important that you look after yourself first.
Yeah. And going back to the business itself and Tots to travel, can you share with us what the future holds for you? I mean, that you're prepared to share with us.
Yeah. Well, it's massive. It's massively exciting. We're seeing tremendous growth, really exciting growth. That's the result of all sorts of small incremental changes, but mostly making sure that we've got the right product and that we are efficient as a business, and that's been really, really key, and that we're able to buy the traffic at an efficient price. So that's really exciting. And so really 2018 is about scaling the business in an efficient way, driving more traffic, product that people really want to buy, and having launched Tots Love Fun, which is our resort brand.
Sorry, Wendy, what's it called? Your brand?
Tots Love Fun.
Tots Love Fun. Right. Sorry.
Tots Love Fun. Yes. Yeah. So having launched Tots Love Fun in December last year, and having run that almost in beta for most of this year, we know that that's the way forward, and so we are growing that brand and building more resorts, and bringing on the personnel to be able to do that really, really well and become a global brand in the meantime.
Yeah. You've kind of piqued my interest in a few things that you've said there that I'm just going to go back to. You talked about driving traffic. So clearly, one of the things that you and Rob do as a business owner is you do a lot of marketing and client acquisition. Can you share with us some of the things that you do? But here's the reason why I'm asking this question, by the way. Any business can learn from another business. If you're doing things that are working, I can literally guarantee that our clients, if they were to apply this to their business, they would enjoy similar success. So just share with us the things that have worked well for you in terms of client acquisition.
Well, I think the main thing, and something I've already mentioned, is that you've got to have a really compelling proposition, because you can't market your way out of a crap idea or a crap proposition or a crap service level, or you've got to have a really, really good proposition. On Facebook, we talk a lot about resonance, which is really an energetic thing. So when we've spent the last 11 years putting different types of product in front of people and seeing what happens. Now, you put some product in front of people and they get very excited, then they love it and they get it straight away and they buy it. Then you put other types of products in front of people and it just falls flat. You send out a newsletter and nobody bites, nobody wants anything to do with it, and you sort of can see the tumbleweed rolling down the road, and so it starts with having something that's really exciting and really compelling, and then when you start using the various channels to put that proposition in front of people. So by channels I mean, Facebook advertising, pay-per-click, so Google AdWords, remarketing, any of the traditional methods. I mean, for B2B, there might be some networking, whatever it is. You've got to be able to put your proposition to them in a way that is really compelling. So that means, say in our digital marketing, that means that we know who we're marketing to, and we know we've got something really compelling, and we know that things like the photos are really important. So we know which photos really work and which photos don't work because we've tested them. So we've got a very strong culture of experimentation within the business, and we are constantly testing and improving. And so I think that's really key for any of you doing digital marketing. It's not, you can't just put one ad up and hope that that's the job done. You've got to have 6 ad sets and be testing and split testing one thing. And we're all effectively more or less digital businesses now, and you've got to have an atmosphere of experimentation and be on it. And if that isn't your bag, if your bag is not, and mine isn't particularly, I'm not detailed enough to be that, then you need to find somebody who has that attention to detail to test and retest and iterate and retest again, and just evolve your marketing and your ads so that to make sure that they do work.
Wendy, that's absolutely awesome. You've shared some real gems with us. At the beginning, you shared with us the secrets to success for a business and that value proposition. And then you then talked about business owners to be successful. I love that term you used there about the elite athlete mindset. So healthy bodies, well-being, peak performance. You then talked about reading and acquiring knowledge. You made a really valid point there. It's not just about acquiring the knowledge; it's also about implementing the knowledge. Interestingly, one of our rules, I don't normally share this in public, is that when prospects reach out to us and say, "Oh, Terry, I've read your book," or whatever, one of the questions we ask is, "Have you read it in full?" They say, "Yes, I have." And we always ask this question from the articles that, my emails, my newsletters, my books. What have you actually implemented?
Yeah.
Because that tells us something about the individuals. And there's a saying, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
If they start giving you excuses to why they couldn't do it because they were too busy, you kind of know that's what they're going to do in the future as well.
Yeah.
You made a really good point there. You talked about the importance of having a coach or a mentor. And I want to be clear here. This isn't about Terry just saying you've got to work with me. And it isn't. But I would strongly recommend that you get somebody that you're accountable to. I think as a business owner, it's so easy, isn't it, Wendy, to say, yeah, I'll do that, and I'll do that. But as you're the business owner, you're not accountable, then you don't do it. It's almost like, well, so what? Nobody knows anyway. It's a conversation I had with myself. So that was a really good point. And bring in the best talent. So many hiring managers will say, look, I'm gonna cut back on my recruitment costs. And the moment you do that, what you're saying at some level, the people that were recruited aren't that important to our business. But you talked about the importance of the team. Absolutely fantastic. And so summarising it at the end about marketing, so many business owners say to us, well, my market's different and it won't work. And my response is always the same. My opinion doesn't matter. Neither does yours. Yeah. Just go and test it, as you said there. Test the images. And it was music to my ears when you said, you've tested the images that work. We share things with clients. We think this image will work, and they go, why do you say that? I say, well, our experience tells us, but hey, don't take our word for it.
Yes, exactly. And I think what you were asking about setbacks earlier, and I think this is really pertinent to the recruitment sector, is that we when we got the investment in, we had committed to very fast growth, and so we started recruiting, and we recruited really quickly, and in retrospect, we recruited really badly, and it didn't take very long to realise that we hadn't recruited very well. So we pulled back and undid a lot of the decisions that we had made, and went right back to scratch and started really looking at our culture, the purpose of the business, and this whole, why are we here? That whole thing about we're here because we passionately believe that holidays make families stronger. Our absolute core belief. We went back to all of those things that you hear about, and you go, oh, that's bollocks. That this whole thing about claptrap about culture and claptrap about mission and purpose and values and so on. But actually, when you start to scale fast, you realise that stuff's really, really important, really important. And so then the next step, having clarified our values and our culture and so on, was to then put it into a very, very tight recruitment document and recruitment system that we now use to make sure that we are recruiting not only for aptitude and ability and ability to do the job, but also really key that these people have our values and share our values. And so hopefully this time we're growing our team with the values, with a common set of values and a common understanding of why we're here, so that we can grow on a much stronger foundation.
Awesome. Absolutely inspiration as well. Wendy, thank you so much. Wendy, where can people find out more about your business?
Oh, well, Terry, thank you so much for having me. It's always a delight to speak to you. And anything. I hope my ramblings and unstructured answers have been of some help to somebody.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, anybody can go to the website, which is tots2travel.co.uk.
Sorry, Wendy, would you mind just spelling tots to travel? Just
TOTS as in children, TO and then travel.co.uk. And probably the most exciting place to watch us, and particularly if you're watching, how social media works, is on Facebook, on our Tots2 Travel Facebook page. There's this really exciting resonance and engagement going on there. So I think that's an interesting place to keep an eye on what we're up to.
Fantastic. So that's www.tots.travel, and that's .co.uk.
Absolutely.
And Tots to Travel on Facebook as well. Wendy Shand, thank you so much indeed. Absolute pleasure, and you shared so many gems with us. And as you're listening to this, here's a question to ask yourself: how can I, what I've discovered here, how can I implement this into my business? Because I promise you, there were so many gems there, and you answered them off the top of your head, Wendy, which I was most impressed with. But there were so many gems there. Thank you so much indeed, Wendy.
Oh, Terry, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Not at all. This is Terry Edwards, Renegade Recruiter, on Renegade Recruiter Unleashed. Until next time, take care, take action, and be relentless.